Hello, everyone, and welcome to LaKesha and Friends. And I'm so excited to have my friend Eric Smith on with us this evening to talk about, you guys already know, voting and the upcoming elections. And so I'm so excited to pick his brain because he is a leader and just so innovative in his thought process. So I have a ton of questions, but before we get into it, please introduce yourself.
Good evening, everyone, and thank you, LaKesha, for inviting me to talk with you. This is a great opportunity and a great platform to share our thoughts on such an important topic, and especially in this season of the year and this time that's coming up. But my name is Eric Smith, Eric Alfonso Smith, as you see at the. I am the oldest of three. I'm from the DMV of Maryland, born and raised right outside of DC. I'm a lifelong member of Zion, served in various positions in Christian education and delegate to the General Conference for a time.
Wow.
I'm only 32. Absolutely. Because in our church, it doesn't work like that.
It does not.
Yeah, it doesn't. I was actually the youngest elected delegate back in 2008.
Wow.
I was 19 when I was elected.
Wow.
To the General Conference that year.
So before we go any further, so what made you get involved? Because I think that there's some parallels between your involvement in the church and why we don't see as many young people involved civically. What was it that made you want to be involved in the process?
So for me, my leadership has always been a consistent theme and pattern in my life and in my service in the church and outside of the church, in my school, in my community, and things like that. It just seems like people just look to me, have looked to me to lead and have seen qualities in me, even when I didn't see them in myself. And I think that's the good mark of a leader, where you are inspiring others to come into the fold and to make sure that there are other people holding up the banner and carrying out the mission and know what the mission is.
Oh, wow.
So for me, with church, I kind of to go into an anecdote, but back at my home church, is Scotland AME Zion Church in Potomac, Maryland. My pastor at the time was Reverend James Pfeiffer, the late Reverend James Pfeiffer. I was 11 years old, and he had just came there maybe a couple of years before, and he said, "Young Mr. Smith, we need somebody to lead the youth." And if you know anything about Zion, 11-year-olds are not youth; they're children.
Right.
So I was like, "But Pastor, I'm just 11. I'm still a kid." And he said, "Well, we need you, and you're going to be in charge of youth. Okay, talk to the sister so-and-so and get going." And I was like, just confused.
Right.
So that kind of actually propelled me to start in my leadership in church. So I've always been the youngin in the group and kind of dealing with people that were older than me.
Wow.
So going from there, just other people pulling me in, mentoring me, and also in general, my mantra, my thought process is that you need more people at the table,
right,
to have a better, in the multitude of counsel, there's wisdom. So you need a diverse group of leadership members, team members, and things like that to have the best outcome and for God's plan to be in full effect.
So even looking at our communities and leadership, why do you think we don't involve more young people? Because when you were telling that story, I was just thinking on all levels, how we don't pull more young people in to hear their voices. Why do you think we have such an aversion to the youth voice or the young people's voice?
I think it's just a matter of tradition, just people's mindsets. Because even for myself, I do find myself, and I have to catch myself when I say things like, "Oh, that's not how we've done it before." When I was starting out, this is how we did it, and we've never done it this way. And those type of mindsets, it's just natural for human beings to get into a pattern, and especially if you're a leader and you've been serving in a position for a while, or you just expect certain things to happen, and you kind of do feel like it's about you.
Right.
And it may not be intentional, but I think people just in general, okay, I've been in this role for X amount of years and I like doing it. I'm pretty good at it. Or I've used to be good at it. So I keep getting selected or elected or appointed or whatever the situation is. So I'm just going to keep doing it. And it's mine, and that's what I'm supposed to do. And if you're trying to come up and you haven't paid your dues, I think a lot of people equate quality and efficacy with
Mhm.
seniority and longevity. And
Right.
things are not one and the same.
Right, because I think like even as we kind of pivot and look at Congress, so some people have been advocates of term limits for that very reason, because you have some people who've been in Congress for 20, 30 years and they're not willing to be innovative. They're not looking at what are some new ways that this system can work. And so we end up just getting more of the same. And then it's hard for new people to kind of break the ceiling to get elected.
I think I'm actually, I might be ruffling some feathers with this because I know it's kind of mainstream with the term limit movement. I'm actually against term limits
Really?
for Congress. I do think there's a benefit to seniority. However, the whole point of democracy and representative forms of government is that the people elect the persons into office. And if you don't think that your congressman or senator or governor, city council member, mayor, X, Y, and Z are not doing what they're supposed to do, or if you think, oh, they just always, we always send them to Congress. Well,
Right.
stop sending them. Just stop sending them. It's that easy.
Right.
We don't vote for life. We don't vote for dictators. We don't vote for multi-year terms. Most elected officials, a senator serves for 6 years.
Right.
And governors, executives usually serve for 4. The House of Representatives is a 2-year term. So you have the opportunity to reevaluate their service after they've done some work or they have not done any work.
Right.
It's up to us to go out and vote. And it's also up to us to run against those persons. You can run against them. But we know there is some system of seniority, incumbency does have its perks.
Right.
However, with this day and age and the digital age, there's more that we can do.
So you just had an election about, I guess, 2 years ago where you were a young person running in a system. What advice would you give to a young person who is interested in running, not necessarily for a church office, but just like putting themselves out there and some of, the obstacles that they might face because people say, oh, you're too young or you're not ready. Like, how did you kind of like shore up like yourself on the inside to put yourself out there and to run?
Well, one, you do have to have some internal fortitude.
Yeah.
You just as a person, you have to be sure of yourself. Of course, there will be times when you may doubt yourself, or the naysayers may overwhelm your emotions. But at the end of the day, you do have to have some internal strength, and that comes from preparation. And knowing your stuff, knowing what you've been given, that God has given you, that you are offering to advance His agenda if it's in the church, or help His people if it's in other offices, especially civic offices. So that's one thing. And then also you just have to, and with being sure of yourself, I really don't think it's appropriate for people to just come out of the blue and run for things and do things. You have to do the work and you have to show your track record. Not saying that you have to have had the office or a similar office before, but you need to show some evidence that you are committed to the work that you are seeking. If you're running for city council, that city council election should not be the first time that people hear your name.
Right.
You should be volunteering in the community, working in the community, doing different things in your community to add to your resume per se, so that you can have something to stand on.
I think that is so important because you do see people a lot of times that just kind of jump out there and you're like, wait a minute, where did you come from? And like
Yeah.
that, like, you know, you like like where are your receipts? Like, you know,
Right. Yeah.
right, like, you know what, but I think that, you know, we do need more young people to get involved and to want to
Mhm.
run. But I think that that's excellent advice. Like, you need to also understand like the office that you're running for and what it actually does before
Mhm.
you get out there, because people are going to expect you to lead from day one. Like, you don't get
Absolutely.
to like get elected and then you figure out like, what am I doing? Like, you have to be ready to lead on day one. And we know that representation matters, just like in DC with the Black Lives Matter, you know, being painted in the streets. Like, that would not have happened without representation of someone who believed that Black Lives Matter.
Mm-hmm. And yeah, you have to have a um, change, and progress happens from multiple angles. And we all have a part to play. And, every part of, just like your body, every part of your body has a specific function. And, you have to play your part and know which part is best for you. So we have to have a seat at the table in every function. And I think there's enough people, especially young folks, people of color, Christians out there that have multitudes of talents that can spread and expand to different parts of our society, whether it be church, civic, business, all of those things, nonprofit, things like that, where we can, we just need to sit at the table, and we have to do the work, and that's where it is. I know for with my election, as you alluded to earlier, you really would have thought I was running for president.
It was serious.
Yeah, it was serious. It was a whole 6-month sprint, but I mean, not just reciting what happened. I had been working in the field for a long time. Even being a young person, I've been around and I've shown my efforts and my dedication to the work in previous offices. And for several years, I've been in Christian education for almost 20 years. Being 32 years old, I've been in Christian education for almost 20 years.
Right.
But being elected regional VP in VCYC, and then being appointed as a regional vice president in ACE when I ran for first vice president, but I lost by 6 votes.
Wow, every vote counts.
Every vote counts. I lost by 6 votes. But I think God works all things together.
Yeah.
He had a plan that wasn't necessarily my plan or what I desired at the time, but it all worked out for the good. And I was able to come back 4 years later and run for president.
So
5% of the vote.
I know, that was so amazing. But so here's one question, because I hear a lot of people say that like young people don't care and they're not involved, and I just really believe that's a myth. And I think that a lot of it is because like when we don't have a seat at the table, so you want our money and you want our resources, but you don't want our voice. Like, do you feel like that's one of the reasons why you don't see more young people involved? Not because we're not interested, but because we don't feel represented.
Absolutely. And that's the ploy. I mean, that's kind of the catch with young people, because that's a lie. That's a lie that young people don't care or are not involved. I mean, just again, like you mentioned earlier, look at Black Lives Matter. That's young people.
Yeah.
I mean, they are all ages, all colors, all races, but it is spearheaded and sustained by young people. And then if we look at the 2018 elections, and especially in the congressional elections, there's a record number of young people.
Right.
And were elected. A young lady my age from Illinois, a Black woman, I think her name is Lauren Underwood.
Mm-hmm.
She's a vice chair on a committee in the House of Representatives. And I think she's 32. She won election in a formerly held Republican seat that is majority white. So,
Right.
So she had to put in some work, and so young people do care. So that's a myth. And I definitely agree with you. And young people don't like to play games. like to feel taken advantage of or taken for granted. So that's where I think other people feel as though young people don't care or are not involved. But you can't ask young people to give hundreds of thousands of dollars to whatever cause it is, whether it be church, because we do that in the church too.
Right.
And have them do all the legwork for all the programs, anything technology. Every young person ain't tech isn't, because I'm not the most tech savvy person. But you can't have us running ragged, spending all this money, and then you do not want our input.
Right.
And that's where I see a lot of burnout especially in the church.
Yeah, and I wonder, as you were talking, like I was thinking about the fact that, the two presidential candidates are like almost 80 years old. And, when we start, thinking about like people not being excited, it's like possibly because people don't see themselves. And that even trickles down to, why people are not voting in Senate races and House of Representatives races, because they look at the candidates and they're like, just looking at these people, like there's no way they represent my interests or they understand my context. Whereas when people do start to see people who look like them and who represent their interests, and it's like, this is someone I can get behind. And I think that we really minimalize that and and attribute it to people not caring, when it's really not that they don't care, but they think that the system doesn't care.
Absolutely. I totally agree with everything you said. Yeah, we need diversity in our elected officials. We need diversity in the field that we have to choose from. And that starts with us. We have to be the diversity that we want to see. We have to be the change we want to see. So we need to encourage and support people that look like us when they do run.
Right.
And we need to make sure that we have the best qualified people that look like us run when they do run.
Right, because all skin folk ain't Kim.
No. And that's the part. But also to the flip side, everybody is not like us either. So there will be some different people that may end up being your choices that may not look like you, and you just have to make the best decision for you and your community and your life. But I just want us. I think we get so hard on the ones that do run,
right?
Nitpick on them, and even
like the purity test, like you don't. If your record hasn't been clean like the entire time, then we just like throw you away. When, not being partisan, but there's another party that, as long as you represent some of what I'm looking for, then rock with you until the wheels fall off. Yeah, we're quick to throw our candidates. And most of the time, like, here's the thing that gets me. It's like disinformation that's planted in our community, because I'm like,
and we believe it.
I know you didn't go doing any research to find this. And so we start sharing it, and then we suppress our own vote, which impacts our own interests, while the other party is like supporting like pedophiles and rapists. Like,
absolutely. Black people, stop believing every meme and every post that you see, okay? Right. You need to get your news from a reputable news source. Instagram is not the be all. Twitter is not the be all end all. Actually, look at CNN and MSNBC and the Washington Times, Washington Post, not the Times.
Yeah, not the time. Yeah, because like it's not fake news. And and if you want to know, like compare it against other, sources. I feel like what economists are saying about the economy, not just what like somebody who's writing an opinion piece. Like there's so much. Right. I think like we need to teach our people about how do you actually go about doing this research, because I just feel like sometimes we're so gullible, and the first thing that people put out, like we jump on it because we want the first person to share the news, and it's like, yeah, but is it even factual?
Absolutely. And you made a really good point. Opinion writers, a lot of the articles people do read and share and post are opinions.
Right.
Right. That's an editorial. That's not fact. You need to look at straight reporting and reporters when you're gathering your information. Of course, you can look at the opinion writers, especially if it's one that you agree or one that you disagree, may give you a different perspective on the facts. But you need to start with the facts so that you can have a base knowledge from which to judge the issue that you're researching and the candidates that you're vetting for whatever topic or election that you're preparing for.
Most definitely. Yeah. And even
Yeah,
like you can look up their record. Like you can go to like Ballotpedia, like there are different sources where if it's someone who's already in office, you can go and see what their actual voting record is. And if you don't, believe in CNN or MSNBC, you think that, they're all fake news, like go to NPR. Like there's so many different reputable sources.
Associated Press.
Exactly.
Reuters. I mean, there's a lot of stuff that we can do, but unfortunately, a majority of us are lazy and we don't have the time and effort to actually do some of that research. So once we hear one squabble or some misinformation or some negative thing, then that deters us and suppresses us and depresses us so that we do not take part in our civic engagement.
Yeah.
I had a conversation with my cousin, and he said, I'm not going to vote. I'm not registered, blah, blah, blah. I don't like any of the candidates. And so me and him had a conversation. He was like, well, the popular vote doesn't matter. So why am I going to vote? So I had sat down and explained to him, one, you're not just voting for the president. That's
right.
the thing. It's very important that you vote for a president, but that's not the only thing you're voting for. But when you're voting for president, what you're doing is each state is allotted a certain amount of electoral votes. And the candidate that receives the most votes in that one state is awarded the electors from that state.
Right.
So that's where the popular vote matters. And then they collect the electoral votes based on who won in each state and count them up, and whoever gets 270 or more wins.
Right.
So when I explained that to him, he was like, oh, okay, that makes more sense. Because, when Hillary ran in 2016, she won the popular vote, but she lost the election.
Right.
Right. Okay. So that's why she lost, because she didn't win the right amount of states. I mean, we can get into whether the Electoral College is appropriate in this day and age, but that's the system that we're in.
Yeah.
And then with the way that our current political structure is framed, we're in a two-party system for all legitimate purposes. We don't have a strong third party or other alternative. And we have the Democratic and Republican parties. And this system, how messed up and corrupted it can be based on how we let it's what we have at the moment. And the way it works, it's a winner take all situation. There's no divvying it up based on percentages and things. It's whoever has the most gets it all, and they get the power. So if we do not step up and vote, the winner, whoever has just one more vote than the next, gets everything. So that's why our vote matters. And if we don't participate, then we're allowing folks that do not represent our interests and do not have our best interests at heart to take everything.
Yeah.
Everything. So that's why that's important that we vote.
And that's why, and that's why I wanted to have these conversations, because I think that too often we try to guilt people into voting. Like, your ancestors died for you to have the right to vote, which is true. However, when people don't see the connection between their daily lives and their vote, and the line is 5 hours long, then my ancestors dying for my right to vote is really not compelling me to stand in this line. But when I start thinking about the person that I elect, maybe is going to be the person who appoints like our police chief, and I know that our city has issues with police brutality, or we need a new attorney general, and I'm going to stand in line as long as it takes to replace this person who's not prosecuting police who kill Black people. When we have like that level of understanding, then it makes it more important for us to vote. And I don't think we spend enough time having those conversations with people. We just be like, oh, you got to go vote. And they're like, No.
Yes, we're in the middle of a pandemic. People are facing economic troubles, and because the country elected a Senate that does not value human life, does not value human suffering, and because they're okay financially, they're not feeling the effects. But
Right.
some of us are not okay financially, and we have to wait until they work out the deal so that it can be in their interest rather than our interest.
Right.
If we elect people that are in our interest, then we can see more action and we can hold them accountable. But since they won, they take it all, like I said before. And we have to make sure that we are participating actively, voting, contacting our elected officials so that they can hear us and hear the groundswell of what the people want and what the people need.
Yeah. Well, it is Saturday, Sunday night, Saturday night. What day is it? Sunday night? So, and I thank you for taking time like out of your evening, because I know I said it would only be like 10 or 15 minutes, but I told you like the conversation was gonna get so good.
I know it is good. We could keep going.
I know, like, I had to pick your brain because, like, I just know like how passionate you are about leadership and just helping people to make the connection between, you know, how our leaders are selected and how that impacts our lives is a conversation that we can't have enough, because sometimes we take for granted that everyone gets it or everyone has the same understanding that we have. But I'm sure that there are people who are going to watch this video and they're going to be like, wow, like I never thought about it like that. I never saw it like that.
Yeah, I hope so.
Yeah, so we have to keep this dialogue going so that we can reach more people, and not just for this election, but for people to have a habit of voting. Like whenever elections come up, like even if they vote for dog catcher, you should want to have a say of who the dog catcher in your community is.
Absolutely. Every time there's an election, it is time to vote. I mean, even when we first started voting, my family, I'm the oldest of three, so it's five of us. This, especially now, like this past election, during the primaries, we sat down, all five of us, and looked up the candidates, talked about it. Of course, we made our own decisions,
Right.
but we talked about it so that we can make informed decisions.
Yeah.
So that we can know who we're selecting to represent us in these various positions. And president, governor, senator, those are all powerful positions in our country. But the ones that really affect you in your daily, everyday life, everything, are your local officials.
Right.
County and city persons. They affect which streets go up, where neighborhoods are built, where supermarkets are, where drugstores are, the value of your property taxes, education, how education is funded based on property taxes and the allocations that we have for those things. The county executives and the mayors appoint planning commissions and judges and all of those people that prosecute petty crimes and the things that lock up Black people for nonsense, but then let some other people go free for major crimes that people. So great, vote for the president, but make sure you vote in every election that's taking place. And elections don't just happen every 4 years. They happen almost every year, all times of the year. Some happen in the spring and the fall. And 2020, there was elections in 2019, 2018. So we just have to make sure that we're doing our part. And yes, like you said, your ancestors fought and died for this right, but you're living now, and you have to live through this. So be a part of what you are living in now.
That is so awesome. And I love the fact that you said like you and your family like sat down and like had conversations. And I think that that's something that every family should do, because like as much as like I support the Democratic Party, like there are sometimes when you look up the candidates and you see that even the Democratic candidate may not be the best representative of my
Absolutely.
And so you have to look up both candidates to see, like, you know, whose position most closely aligns with mine. And it's not always going to be, you know, one party. So I think that that's excellent. So before we go, what is one like piece of advice that you want to share? I know you shared like so many nuggets of wisdom, but what's like your last piece of advice that you would like to share with our listeners?
Um, be encouraged, be hopeful, be optimistic. We are living in some crazy times, and it seems like it just can't get any worse or any crazier or dramatic. But do not be discouraged. Continue to live your life the best way that you can and what's best for you and your family and your loved ones. But we need you in this process. And since we're talking about voting, we need you to be registered to vote and to actually go out and vote. Whether you go in person, request an absentee ballot, or mail in your ballot, or request a ballot and drop it off at the drop box, do what you can to make sure that your voice is heard. Because we can't complain about what we don't participate in. If you don't have any skin in the game, I don't want to hear you.
Right.
I don't want to. I can't respect that. If
Right.
you and let's stop letting perfect be the enemy of the good. Um, I'm not perfect. You're not perfect. None of us are perfect. But we have to select people that best represent us out of the choices we have. So let's expand our choices, and somebody's going to get that office, whether
Right.
you or not. So be a part of the change that you want to see.
Awesome. Well, thank you so much for being on the show, and most importantly, thank you so much for being my friend. Like I always
Thank
love like
you.
our conversations. So
Always. And thank you for being my friend and the opportunity to chat with you. And I hope